We got a new segment on here called Top 3, where we count down our top 3 of just about anything. And for this, our first episode, Top 3 Stephen King novels.
Top 3.
Hit it!
All right, I'm going to start us out with my number 3, which I feel is pretty underrated, The Dead Zone. That was actually a movie with Christopher Walken. Was it Christopher Walken?
Christopher Walken, yeah.
Back in the day. I thought I had remembered that he was in it. Movie was decent. Novel was even better. I really liked it. It was kind of a harrowing, dramatic novel. Basically, this guy gets into I believe a vehicle accident, sustains a head injury, and suddenly has the second sight. Suddenly he can see things that are coming up in the future, and it becomes pretty harrowing.
He has to touch a person or an object or whatever, and once he does, yeah, you can see the future or the past or whatnot. It's really well written, really tight. Like, this was before Stephen King's books kind of started getting bigger and bigger. Politically, I think it's irrelevant because it just portrays politics as like this circus, which, media circus, which I guess it kind of is today.
What? It is?
Believe it or not, yeah.
Okay.
And it's just got this harrowing, well-earned ending, I think. Like, it's good.
Yeah.
Highly suggest. And there was a television series too with a guy that always played the nerds in the 80s movies, Michael Anthony Hall, right?
I had forgotten about that series.
It was kind of a procedural.
Right.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was a lot, it was a lot different than the book and the Christopher Walken movie, but
It's kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit removed from the book. They kind of messed with the whole, like the plot, the setup for him. But yeah, I do like the original novel, The Dead Zone.
My number 3 is Eyes of the Dragon. Came out in 1984. It's just kind of like a dark fairy tale. Man, is it just a well-told yarn.
It is definitely a nice, nice. I'm gonna put that in quotes because there are some scary parts to it, and there's of course good guys and bad guys. But it was really good fairy tale, which you didn't get a lot of from Stephen King. I did actually read it to our girls, and they really, really liked it. They actually requested it a couple times. So we read it a couple times to them.
It's the epitome of a page turner. I can remember reading it the first time and just could not wait to get back to it if I had to put it down to see what would happen. Yeah.
It is definitely a fairy tale. It's very fun to read and still has some real life issues, some real life quandaries, and some scary moments.
Yeah.
And
it ties in with The Stand and the Dark Tower series, as it's got Flag in it. It's young prince and his brother kind of tangling with him. Very good stuff. Definitely recommend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, you ready for my number 2?
Yeah.
My number 2 was, after much debate, because I've changed this back and forth several times, my number 2 was It. Everybody knows It. Big movie that came out not too long ago. It's been remade a couple of times, which I have to give a shout out to the original 80s. Was that in the 80s?
We all flew down there, Georgie.
Or the 90s when they made that It movie. I believe it was
the early 90s, maybe.
Late 80s, early 90s. We'll have to look that up.
I'll Google it and put it right here with editing magic.
The immortal Tim Curry plays the clown in that, and I think the movie itself is kind of a little bit funny, but his presence in it makes it a good movie.
Hola.
The book itself, giant. I think at that time he had, I guess, equated number of pages with, I don't know, with I'm done with this novel, like with great, I don't know what he wanted, but he wrote and wrote and wrote this book. It's a giant book. I read it many, many times. It was dog-eared, and I remember buying several copies of it.
I think he was still on the coke.
For those of you who don't know what It is about, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a group of kids that encounter this horrible supernatural force that lives under their town, basically, and they defeat it, and then they grow up and they find out it's come back, and they've all made this promise to go back and defeat it again if they need to. And so you get their childhood, you get their adulthood, and then you kind of the book links the two times together, and you learn a lot about these people. It's a really good character study for real.
It's kind of Lovecraftian horror mixed with a 50s drive-in horror. Mm-hmm. It's a very good. It's not my top 3, but it is probably my top 5, definitely my top 10 Stephen King's. The movies, I've got mixed feelings about both. I do think the original TV miniseries is my favorite. I really like the kid version on those. I mean, come on, it's got John Boy in it.
It had John Ritter in it. Did it not?
Had all the Johns.
Had all the Johns
John Boy,
in there.
John Ritter, John Ford,
John Deere. All
Johnny
right.
Appleseed.
So what was your number 2?
Dead Zone. We've already talked about that one. But yeah, my number 2 is a Dead Zone. So just one higher than you, but one we both love.
Okay. Do you want to hear my number 1?
Yes, I do.
All right. This was the first book that made me cry when I read it, which was kind of a revolution for me when I was younger, because I didn't know that you could get into a book that deeply, or a book could make me feel that way. Okay. And yeah, I remember the particular chapter that I had started. It's the beginning of a chapter. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to spoil this for you guys. But I remember reading this chapter and just bursting into tears. It was so devastating to me. Pet Sematary is a really well-written novel. He makes it very personal. Again, this is a really good character study, and that's what brings it home for me. You get to know these people, and you get to care about them. And so, when something happens, that was my crying fit. But it's a really good movie, and I would still, or a really good book, excuse me, and I would recommend it today to somebody.
We're in agreement again. Pet Sematary is my number 1 as well. It's the scariest book I ever read. I didn't cry because I'm a man, and even as a kid I was a man. Even as a boy I was a man.
Right.
But boy, did I find it scary. My brother had probably died in a car accident not that many years before I read Pet Sematary, so I really, related to the father's grief in that, and it seemed like every dumb mistake he made is something I would have done too, trying to get his kid back, and that was the scariest part, was how logical he was making it out to be in his own head, because it was coming from his point of view. That's why I think the movies could never be as scary as the book.
No, because in the book, of course, you get his thoughts.
Yeah.
And they, you can't really do that in a movie without a voiceover, and I think it would take away the power. But yeah, I think it was terrifying, and I think I was so moved by it because I could see myself doing. I could see his logic. It's and his actions and his reasonings were so human. That's really the gut punch there.
I went and watched that original movie opening night with my friend Glenn, and I had nightmares about Zelda for a couple weeks after that. Yeah.
I finally came back for you.
There's not been that many great Stephen King movies. So it's not a perfect movie, but I love Fred Gwynn in it as Judd Crandall. I think he's great.
Yeah.
He got Oscar snub.
Oh yeah, big Oscar snub on that one.
Those are our top 3. Now, far be it from us to look down upon something beloved from our generation. What's your least favorite Stephen King novel?
Yeah, we got to give you the other side of the coin, okay? Because not every book was a winner. My least favorite of his books was called The Regulators. I don't know if you're very familiar with that.
I read it once.
And then I put it down. The story was kind of hard to follow. I didn't really care for the characters like I did in a lot of his other novels. The basic premise is that there's a kid in this town who is dreaming up some things that begin to appear. And these people are basically, I guess, caught under the spell of this boy's dreams come to life. Seems like a fairly good premise, but it just didn't work. It just didn't work for me. Sorry, Stephen King. Sorry.
Not one of my favorites either. I can barely remember much about it, so it's pretty unmemorable, I guess, for me at least. My least favorite is going to be kind of controversial because many people's favorite, it shows up on the best of list for horror novels or Stephen King novels or whatever a lot. But it's going to be The Stand. Specifically the 1990 complete and uncut, unabridged version. We talked about The Dead Zone, how tight of a novel that was, and how perfect of an ending it is.
Right.
Stand is just the opposite. Now, I loved The Stand is 1,138 pages long. I loved 1,137 pages of that thing. Even though it did go a little rambling, there were side characters like happy crappy guy that really didn't have any reason to be there that he added back in.
Right.
And
meet
whatnot.
Joe. He's getting married to Debbie down there. Let's go say hi to them. Yeah.
And you do get to love a lot of these characters and get to know them. Stu and Red, or is that the same person?
I think
Redmond?
that's the same person. Stu Redmond.
Yeah, and Molly Ringwald. And
Molly
whatnot.
Ringwald was there.
And then at the end, when everything looks lost for our heroes, they're all tied up with the bad guys. They're going to die. The hand of God, literally the hand of God comes down and fixes it and saves them. It's the Deus Ex Machina brought to life in the modern day. I was so mad. I'd spent weeks reading through that book.
Yeah.
Half a year.
I can see what you're saying because for such a long, involved novel that pulled us into everybody's lives from Stu to Debbie and Joe, like, it was kind of a pat ending.
Why didn't God just do that in the first place?
It was just kind of a pat, there we go.
It seemed like to me he wrote himself in the corner a little bit, but I don't know.
I don't know, but the ending struggled a little bit. But, one of the few reasons that is one of my top 10 maybe.
I do also love it.
I'd say 10. And the reason it makes my top 10 list, even with such a bad ending, is the beginning. The bulk of that book is so good.
It's got some of his best characters too, I think.
Yeah. And again, characters that you care about.
None of their actions matter. Nothing of what they did was of consequence.
Right. And that's
just saying.
That's the problem is that, they did all these really cool things and then in the end, like I said, Stephen King just came along and fixed it for everybody, and all their effort was for kind of not for naught, but it didn't contribute to a climactic ending for sure. It was very anticlimactic. Yeah.
All right. Well, let us know your favorite and least favorite Stephen King novels in the comments. Please hit like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. I'm Dan.
I'm Marge.
We're the Gen-Xers. Peace out.